Because of my position on the communication lines of the world, things come my way, things that can be useful to others. And something that came my way is a book called Conquer the Crash by Robert Prechter Jr. It's a book about the stock market, but it leads off into many other areas. This is a man who predicted enough rises and falls that he's extremely famous for being able to do that. And why he's able to do that is the stock market runs on one of the laws of the universe called fractals. And you can look into that if you don't know what that is. But something that's fractal on any scale looks identical. And around the time of the 1929 crash, there was a very well-known and talented economist who was bedridden for 2 or 3 years, so he had nothing to do. So he got some papers out and looked at the history of the stock market worldwide for the past, let's say, a couple hundred years. The stock market, because it involves money, is one of the few areas where there are very accurate records going back to the very beginning. And he discovered that the pattern of the stock market is fractal, and that the rises and falls look the same whether you look at it across hundreds of years, a decade, a year, a month, a week, a day, an hour, on almost a minute. So the second man, who was an admirer of his work, Mr. Prechter, started looking into this and started applying it to the stock market to make predictions, and it turned out to be true. And in his opinion, this is the physical and mathematical reveal of human psychology when it comes to money and investing and fear and the herd instinct. Things are great, let's buy in. Things are bad, let's sell. The reason I'm doing this video is it's a good news video, in that the precipitous state of U.S. and Western finance, this whole thing with the banks and the mortgages and the derivatives and all of that, is a natural function of the stock market type of economy. It's an indicator, and that kind of thing always happens, and there's always a reckoning and a precipitous crash, and the scale of these things can be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. The one in Japan has taken over 10 years to recover, for example. However, the laws are known, so from a practical reality standpoint, if you knew this giant financial impending disaster is no more scary than spring coming after winter. It's a natural event. What's happened with it in a negative sense is the general public doesn't know about this, but rich people know this, powerful people know this. So the fact of this happening has been spun into a giant fear machine about the giant worldwide crash which will happen and take you out. That's the bad news. The good news is it's not controllable, but it's knowable. And what this man is suggesting is to get liquid. If you're going to do this, I would suggest getting his book and going through it. But basically, he's suggesting to get out of your properties and paper money and get it into Krugerrands and get it into a Swiss or Australian bank and carry on with life. From my esoteric viewpoint, the reason I mention this is I've very often talked about a book called The Theory of Celestial Influence by Rodney COLIN. And I mentioned 48 orders of universal or cosmological laws that affect human life on Earth. And one of those is that human beings and their mental processes, if they're asleep, as most people are a conduit for communications between the planets. So what goes on up here is partially your own and partially not your own. And I think I perceive this as one instance where one can see that occurring because it's fractal in nature, which is a knowledge that's fairly new to modern science. Also, I believe in the past, before the last worldwide crash of civilization, which seemed to have happened about 13,500 years ago. I think the culture before that knew these kinds of things and was operating with a knowledge of working in line with cosmic forces, which makes things easy instead of fighting cosmic forces or working as we do randomly within them, not knowing why things get better or worse. There's an old Chinese book called the I Ching, which operates on being able to perceive the subtle changes that lead to major effects. And it's a technology you use in real time, and you can tell where you are in the flow and which way the flow is going. And this is based on 64 little diagrams called hexagrams, which means six lines that show the play of forces. And that's another one of these holes in the enforced ignorance that we have here. In the Forbidden City in China, there's a lion with a globe under one paw, and there are 64 divisions on that. Globe, and one of the Confucian commentaries on the I Ching is if one really knew how to use this book, you could rule the world as if it was spinning on your hand. And this is a hint at hyperdimensional physics. Same diagram was found on a tomb in Egypt, burned into a rock, three-dimensionally burned into a rock. 64. Divisions again, and Nassim Harriman having looked at these two items, has integrated that into his new physics, and he won the physics prize lately for some of the biggest advances that have ever been made in physics. So there's something to this. The good-ish news about this is there will be a reckoning of all of that cash, paper money thing. We've had fiat money for about 300 years now. So I did this video to let you know that you can not fear this thing because it's a natural event and it's being pumped up and used as yet another device to keep the public in fear of the worldwide corporate monopoly. So don't fear the Reaper because it's a natural event, and you could prepare yourself for this. And I want to keep it really simple. He keeps it pretty simple in his explanation of it. But for example, if a stock is $1 and you have $1, you can buy a share of stock. If that stock drops down to a penny, you can now buy 100 shares of that stock for $1. So it's the upside of the downside of a crash is your money becomes much more valuable if you can purchase things. If you have gold, it's a time when you can actually make a tremendous amount of money when everyone else is following the psychological trend of I have to dump this stuff and get out of it. And there is some of that occurring now. There's last year there were beautiful homes in Las Vegas selling for $10,000. $1 million homes. So I thought I would pass this on in its simple form. There's this man was interviewed by Tony Robbins as part of his Power Talk series of tapes, and interviews from 2001, and the big crash hasn't happened yet, although I do see hundreds of thousands of people are losing their homes to banks. And if that's happening to you, you might want to look at some of my videos on sovereignty and other things like that. And there's a large group of people putting out videos which would explain that the banking superstructure actually doesn't have power over you, and if you knew what to say to them, you could get your house back or prevent them from taking it. So there you go. Fear not, flourish and prosper.